Welcome to Feminine Power Time. Turn off the chatter and tune in to what matters. This is Christine O'Reilly, your host, and I welcome you to this place where we gather to reimagine the way we and the world work from the inside out by marrying together wisdom, leadership, and well-being, and embracing our power to stay centered and sustained in the chaos of the outside world while we truly come into alignment with what our part is, where our power is, what our purpose is here. And as we've done for the whole 10 years that we've been together, to do this from a place of rootedness into our own personal sustainability and our own practice. So this season, we're in our 10th, we've dedicated to exploring what I call the feminine archetypes, the feminine leadership archetypes. And when we talk about, or we think about a model that I created to really give us some language for what I call elevated leadership, and I call it elevated leadership because to elevate means to rise out of, to rise above. It's almost like elevate and evolve kind of happen at the same time. And we can only create reality from the consciousness that we exist at. So that's true for us individually. It's true for us in a relationship. It's true for us in the teams and families that we work in and live in. It's true for an organization, and it's true for a culture and all the systems that are part of that culture. So if we think about this in terms of looking around at what's happening in our world, so many of the systems that create the matrix or the system that we live in were created, depends how far back you go, in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and before that, whether it's religious systems or education systems. You're saying the education system in America was created to basically, create little people who could go and work in companies and work on lines where they would just make more, don't think too hard or think the way we want you to. And when I was writing Overwhelmed and Over It, I remember there's this whole part of the 7 roots to why we're stuck in this burnout and overwhelm that we can't get out of, that we feel as people and our planet is reflecting to us. And it was this notion that we didn't realize that we as humans have the power to create a different system. And what worked in the past isn't going to work to get us, to elevate us forward. And so the same thing happens in our lives, within ourselves, in our own consciousness. I'm seeing it happen over and over and over again in pretty much everyone I work with in their relationships, their primary relationships. And I'm seeing it in communities and teams as well. That's how the change happens. So in this elevated leadership model, there are 6 realms, and in the center of it are purpose and presence. Power and presence. And if you want to see the full model, it is on my website. I'll put a link in the show notes for you all so you can kind of get an idea of what I'm talking about. And so as we are going into this year and this season, and I asked myself a very wise inquiry that comes from the earth wisdom and the feminine wisdom traditions, which is, how can I best serve at this time? And what is needed at this time? So that response then to me was, we get to focus on power and presence rooted in personal sustainability. It's almost like a triangle. So this is half of the 6 realms of feminine leadership, because unless we're truly rooted in our power that's coming from wholeness and not distortion, that we are integrated in our presence, body, mind, heart, and spirit, and that we're rooted in a rhythm and a reality that is sustaining us at a material level, body, mind, heart, and body, mind, heart, and spirit, we will just be too wobbly during these times. And so as I was tuning into it, I was like, okay, you know what we need, which works with both presence and power, are these feminine leadership archetypes. So I'm going to give you just a short little recap on what the feminine leadership archetypes are. If you did not listen to episode 270 and 271. Go back and listen to those because I go a lot more into what archetypes are and why we want them and need them at this time, because there is so much archetypal energy that's happening. And if we want to rise to meet what's happening, it's not just like, let's just bang our fists and scream and yell and rant. There's a way that our presence and our power, we can tune into these archetypal energies that give us the ability to see where to focus, to see what we actually need to be really grounded, to know where when we're operating from a lower frequency that's just creating more shadow, and when we're operating from a higher frequency and octave where we're actually creating from the heart, the higher heart, and creating realities that add love and compassion and ultimately wisdom and harmony. And so today we're going to work with an archetype called the Intuitive Illuminator. So I'll introduce her for you here in just a moment. And there's 4 parts of the Intuitive Illuminator that we're going to play with today. And I'm going to invite you to take into your life over this next month, this next moon cycle, this next quarter. Like, pick a time period that you want to kind of work with this energy. And we need like a whole weekend together for me to download a lot of the information about intuition itself. And there are some episodes, and I'll put them into the show notes, that I've done in the past about intuitive intelligence, heart wisdom, making wise decisions, making wise choices. It is one of my deep beliefs that we need to teach our young beings, the young ones coming up and the ones that are like our age now. We need to learn how to really wield our intuition, how to work with it, how it works, how our full level of intelligence works, how to trust it. And we're born that way, but then we get imprinted into this banana society that it knows, wow, God, if the humans actually had full access to their intuitive intelligence, if they knew how to discern between their fear and our kind of interference patterns and what was really truly going to lead us down a path of illumination, if we had the ability to discriminate between what's truth and what's not true, and what's real and what's not real, we would never have a reality that looks like it does right now. And so when I was feeling into which of the 8 archetypes wanted to come, it was like Intuitive Illuminators, like, me, please pick me. Because we activated the creatrix first, which is the innate knowing at a very simple level that we have the power to birth realities. Right? Now, if we're birthing realities only from one level of our intelligence, which is normally our intellect, because that's the world, it's what the mainstream world values. Logic, rational, the mind. This culture has become so focused on the mind, it's no wonder we have challenges in mental well-being. In people's minds, whenever are burned out, whenever I do a survey when I'm working with a team or a group inside of a company, and I share with them the 8 different kinds of burnout, of which mental burnout is one, and I have them rank them, mental burnout is always the highest. Not physical, mental. And if you think about the level of information coming at you, if you think about the gist of it, not just from an overload of information, but the different levels of frequency, and whether that's something you're tuning in or we're walking through or just the pace that we're living at, intuition doesn't function, and we don't have access to our full level of intuition when we're in the frequency and we're living in a frequency of busyness. When we are constantly plugged in to our devices and our mind chatter is just constantly being fed, all of that input. The yogis talked about this decades, hundreds of years ago, that we would come to this time on the planet when the amount of information and the amount of energy coming at us was too much, and it would create interference for our internal knowing and senses and our ability to sense into the more subtle realms, which is where our intuition and our imagination, and that's where insight comes from. We don't normally get insight if we have our faces inside of a computer and we're plugging away and we're like trying to find the answer. That's the opposite of how intuition and insight comes to us. It's in those spaces, when you're like, you wake up in the morning and your mind hasn't turned on and something drops in, or you're in the shower, or you're talking to a friend and someone says something, or you're walking down the street and something just occurs to you. There has to be space for the intuition and the insight to come in. And we'll get to Space Holder. She's one of our archetypes as well. But the Intuitive Illuminator wanted to come because if you're not fully connected to your four realms of intelligence, which are instinct, intuition, insight, and intellect, you're only operating at a part of your intelligence and your wisdom. We actually need all four of those parts of our how our intelligence works. So again, this is from the 4 eyes model, which I taught and spoke about in episode 212 that I teach in my leadership training. So if you don't know, I'm not going to dive into that today, but if you don't know about that, go back and go look at episode 212, where I get into heart wisdom and I get into the 4 eyes model. And so shortly, it's intellect, insight, intellect, instinct, intuition, and insight. And it looks like a compass, and there's 4 points on it, and each of those fall within a different part. But why this Intuitive Illuminator is so helpful, and why we need her with the creatrix, is that if you're creating from distorted instincts that are based on fear and unease, we're going to talk about unease today, you're going to create, your intuition isn't going to be clear, and what you see isn't going to be clear. And the insight that you have is going to be distorted, and it's going to be driven by some of these baser level frequencies. And also, if you don't understand how your intuition works, and even if you do right now, it's just a lot, it's a lot. And insights are coming in a very interesting way right now, and our capacity to see. So what I'm going to do is, I was kind of sitting with this, I'm like, what's the best way to bring her forward? And knowing that this feminine presence, again, which all of us have, it doesn't matter what your gender identification or biological gender is, feminine presence is part of all of us. It's just not been valued mostly, but it's what people count on us for. If you think of people who usually are the best at what they do, they're very intuitive, and they also have access to the intellect, and they're also in their body driven through the instinct, and they have a connection to the imaginal realms. That's these 4 points that we need to have access to. So the Intuitive Illuminator, she's connected body, mind, heart, and spirit. The Intuitive Illuminator has full access to her intellect and to her intuition. She has full access to her instincts, which are very embodied and primal, as well as her insight, which comes from the imaginal realms, or what the quantum physics would say, like the quantum field. So she's getting input from all of those places. And I'm going to call her a she for right now, just because it is a more feminine presence. And also in the feminine presence allows us to be with all of those at the same time. So why these archetypes is that without language for these things that you're probably already naturally doing in some way, we stop to trust them, we don't get acknowledged for them, we don't get compensated for them. So our role is to articulate, claim, embody, and wield these energies within us to bring forward our most pure and powerful and potent presence. And then apply that to our purpose, apply that to our relationships, apply that to all the parts of our lives. Okay, we've set the table. All right, why don't you just take a little stretchy stretch? She really wanted to be introduced, so I'm going to take a little sip here out of my tea, and I'm going to invite you to close your eyes for a moment, and we're going to slow everything down. Because one thing we know about gaining access to this archetype of the Intuitive Illuminator and all four eyes, as well as the full spectrum of how our intuition works, which are the 6 channels of intuition, which we're not going to get into today, but there's some podcasts on that already. She really wanted to tune us into the energy and to give you a sense and a chance to invite this energy in. And so what we know is that it's your breathing and your breath. So just take a moment to connect with your breath. And allow your nervous system to slow down. Allow your brain to slow down, to relax. Allow that brain to relax and just notice how as your brain relaxes, your breath joins in. And then that allows your belly to soften. Just continuing with your breath and allowing your belly to soften. And then taking another breath into your heart. And just allowing yourself to breathe into your beingness. Instead of your doingness, your beingness that comes from this beautiful heart, which is connected to your spirit. And your soul, which the yogis say there's a point right above your belly button, about 1 inch, that's the seat of your soul in your body. So as we're slowing everything down through your breath, notice your body relaxing. Noticing yourself come into your body. The wisdom you seek will never be in your mind. It'll be in your neutral mind. It'll be in your calm heart, your soft belly, your relaxed body. And we get there by breathing. Breathing right now as we're breathing, but also breathing in your life. And before the Intuitive Illuminator is ready to come out here, she wants me to suggest to you just to take a moment and kind of scan and feel into your life right now. And notice where there's breath, where there's pausing, where there's ebbs and flows, where there's space, where there's a stable pace. Even allowing yourself to feel the bottom of your spine, that root core of stability. It's really hard to hear our intuition and receive insight and respond from our integrated instincts if we don't feel stable. And right now, there's a lot of us feeling unstable, partly because we need to shake things off. And that's okay, because if we're connected and stable and rooted into ourselves, the earth, our connection to spirit, our simpaticos and community around us, we might wobble, we like to say, but we never fall down. We say, wise beings wobble, but we never fall down. And we never make decisions from that place of unease. But we notice it. So also just taking a moment to scan your life for where the unease is right now. Maybe just looking as an observer around what situations in your life are creating unease. And then bringing that back and noticing where that unease might be showing up in your body. Noticing how does that unease show up in your brain and your mind and your thoughts? And then how does it show up in your heart, that unease? How do you know that you're in the frequency of unease? Just tune into your body, your mind, your heart. Even your spirit can get in unease. We've talked multiple times here about in our Shen body, which is our spirit body, can almost like get knocked out of our center, and it's like it's almost sitting to the side of us. And if you've ever had an experience where you look in the mirror over the course of a couple of days and you just don't look like yourself, and your hair is kind of and you're just don't look, it's like oftentimes we're not in, our spirit body has been knocked off track. And so there's a lot of that happening right now. But again, coming back to your breath, and like we practiced last time, just breathing into your mind and that energy of calm. Breathing into your heart and feeling that energy of compassion. Breathing into your pelvis and feeling that groundedness and that rootedness to the earth, that you live on planet Earth. And lastly, breathing into your spirit body, almost like your wings or a beautiful magnetic field around you that's plugged into the universal love that is available to us in light, not from some woo-woo choo-choo way, but seriously, it's real. Like, they just make fun of this stuff and make it woo-woo and shoo-shoo and poo-poo because it's so powerful. And I think this is the place we're going to start with the Intuitive Illuminator. She's just about ready to come out. But I'm going to say this before she does, is that I want you to remember times in your life with your consciousness where you couldn't see what you can see right now. And if you had told yourself 10 years ago, 20 years ago, even 5 years ago, or someone had said to you some of the things that you know to be true within your body and your being, in your brain and all of it for yourself, for the world, you would have been like, that's crazy. That's nuts. No way, because you were living in a specific consciousness. You were operating at a specific frequency, and you could only see what you could see. And there are all these imprints on you that are societal, that are cultural, imprints within you that are connected to your love cracks and what we would call different traumas, big and small, that happen to us. And this is why we, during these times of transformation, it's so challenging because we have to heal and release the past while we'll stabilize in the now, and we create and lead into the future. And so why I'm bringing this up right now is that I want you to understand that as leaders, which are just anyone who wants to use and chooses to use their voices, their choices, and their presence to create a better, brighter world that supports love for the whole and sustainability for the whole, and where there's a harmony that's created, we have to know that we're all still seeing, things are opening. But it gets more confusing now because there's so much interference and there's so much fake, whatever you want to call it. So your sovereignty, our sovereignty, is that our body, your body, our minds, our spirits, like, they're not for sale. And they're not, we're not here to be like interference antennae. Our role and our practice and our right gets to be, I have the eyes to see, I have the ears to feel, I have the subtle senses to be able to feel and see what might not be visible to our eyes. I know that being still and touching these still points daily, weekly, monthly, yearly is part of what keeps me connected. Not to some God out there, not to some dogma out there, not to some security measure out there, but truly in your being, knowing that there are some things that are going to be running through you that fog us up. They just do. This is why I mentioned to you all last time, I just finished a 15-day Ayurvedic cleanse because I could feel the shadow frequency of righteous resentment in my field. And I cannot be my most powerful, pure presence on the planet to do my part to create more wholeness if I'm bringing that energy. There's lots of good reason to bring that energy. And we see it all over. Blame. If we see blame, that's like a little thing to your, like, blame is like, hello, Intuitive Illuminator, spidey sense is going on. So this is about starting to open your eyes to what you're seeing, to open your ears to what you're hearing, not just like your human ears, but like your ears, like the subtle senses. This is why we do yoga. This is why we meditate. This is why we walk in nature. This is why we practice Tai Chi or Qigong. So much of our senses touch into this subtle energy that when we feel something that feels like, that doesn't feel right to me, we can stop and we can pause and we could tune into where the interference is so that we can alchemize that interference inside of ourselves and or see it in the field to see what's actually really happening here. And then how do I want to respond? All right, that's very esoteric, but that's okay. I'm going to get practical with you all right now. Okay. Oh. Lest we just float off into the imaginal realms. The Intuitive Illuminator, she's at the top of the archetype. So she's the very, very top in the north. So that's why her partner in the south is the space holder, which we'll get to not today, but soon. We need both of those because we got to be grounded in our bodies about this. Okay, so without further ado, here is the Intuitive Illuminator. And I'm going to have her speak twice. And the first time you can just listen. And the second time as I go through it, I want you to see if there's any one or two things that really stick out to you that you're like, I would like to know more about that. I would like to invite more of that into my life. And then we'll break it down. And we'll break it down and yeah. Okay, she would like to talk now, so I'm going to be quiet. Okay, Christine. Okay, here comes the Intuitive Illuminator, dear ones. And as she comes out here, notice and kind of presence the color of sapphire blue. A cool energy that also has a warm glow of gold. The presence of stillness, powerful stillness, the presence of deeply embodied, soft in belly, strong in spine, open-hearted, wise eyes, hearing with all of her skin and all of her senses, very present, sovereign within, and deeply connected to the things around her. Intuitive Illuminator. I see what others cannot. My intuitive senses are strong. I see the connection between things. I see the possibility beyond the intellect and the mind. I have access to the imaginal realms and the infinite intelligence of the quantum field where possibility lives. I see the connection between the needs of all. I am adept at translating and speaking this intuitive intelligence to illuminate the wisdom, the path ahead, the possibility, and more. Full body breath, inhale and exhale, calling yourself to presence. And you can even close your eyes here. And the image that we use for Intuitive Illuminator, her eyes are closed. And there's a light shining on her. And the galaxy is kind of moving around her. So you're very aware. It's kind of like an owl. I don't know if owls close their eyes, but let's just close our eyes so you can really listen. A little breath into your spine and see which of these call you forth one more time. I see what others cannot. My intuitive senses are strong. I see the connections between things. I see the possibility beyond the intellect and the mind. I have access to the imaginal realms and the infinite intelligence of the quantum field where possibility lives. I see the connection between the needs of all. I am adept at translating and speaking this intuitive intelligence to illuminate the wisdom, the path ahead, the possibility, and more. All right, my friends. I will post that definition up on my website, which you'll be able to get to from the podcast notes as well. And what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of combine these into four different spaces, and we'll kind of dive into each one, kind of see how this goes. Okay, I see what others cannot. Just take that in for a moment. I see what others cannot. This is something with like pretty much every woman, not all men, but some men I have worked with over the years. This is a common thing. We see what others can't. And we don't understand why other people can't see what we can see. And just think about this in your own life. This might show up in your family system. It might show up at work. It might show up in just looking at humanity and being like, this is crazy. Can't they see? Can't they see? That's kind of how, it shows up for me. So when I'm working with someone inside of an organization or a system, and they see a path for how to do something that just seems obvious to them because they are part of what I call Wicked Smart Genuine Heart, the Wicked Smart Genuine Heart Club. And it can create a lot of frustration because they have a hard time trying to get everyone else to see it. Or this could happen for those of us that are in the impatience club, or what I like to call the pioneering club, where we're just ahead. We're ahead of the curve, meaning that we are out. We're not just in the mainstream, middle of the pack, with everyone else just believing what the current narrative is. We're like pioneering into new territory, and at a consciousness level. So we see how, and we'll get into this, we see how things are connected. We receive insights. We have a connection to our own inner knowing. And so when we look around, and we have a connection to our imaginations. I mean, imagination is like the portal for this intuitive illuminator. Without imagination, it's just, well, A, it's boring, but B, it's bad. It's always going to be bad because the human mind, only tied into logic, does not create things that, as it turns out, really serve humanity. It logic is used to do things like create economic systems that just have to keep making more and more money in order to feed stockholders their dividends and their returns, and at the same time creating a complete unsustainable reality because, oh, by the way, trees don't just keep growing bigger and bigger and bigger, more and more and more and more and more. You actually grow trees to have deep roots, and then you grow community of tree together so they're stronger together, and then you keep your tree healthy to keep making fruit. We've talked about this a lot on this podcast over the last decade. But without imagination, the intellect can't see it. They're just like, no, this is what we have to do. This is how you have to do it. Like, what do you mean? Like, this is how it is. This is just how it is. And there's a difference between accepting what is and then choosing to invite in and see and look around at what you're not seeing and tune in for insight. Invite grace in for insight. Be with the planet and watch it while it's speaking to you. Whether that's, like today I was talking to a good friend and I was speaking about something very specific about what I'm wanting to create and what I'm being guided to. And there was like this crazy, we've never seen it before, huge dragonfly with pink dots on it. And it was just sitting there looking at her. And we're like, that is not from this world. We do not know what world this. It's like, where did that come from? I mean, we've never seen anything like it before. And there are these synchronicities. Like this is the realm of synchronicities. And this is the realm of being able to put the dots together or see possibilities that other people can't. And this might happen in your family system or with your friends. I know this was true for me, and I see it with a lot of the people I work with and their kids, especially, all ages, girls and boys. I'm thinking of a lot of my friends who have sons in their 20s, and they're just like, they're not digging the whole bro-hamsel, they play video games and stuff, but they're not into the whole macho, emboldened masculine, going crazy. Like they see a lot of the stuff that's happening with social media currently and other things, but in their like school or their college, they're the minority, not the majority. And that can be hard, right? When you see what others cannot, it can be really hard to be that person. And it can be frustrating, it can be disheartening. And I know for me, sometimes it's just like, why even bother? I should just give up now. Because clearly they don't care. Clearly they don't want this. And so whatever version that you've had of that, I just want to acknowledge the frustration that comes with the gift of being able to see what others cannot. And what we know is that frustration is an interference frequency. So one of the things that was really important as we work with these archetypes and we go into the many, many years to come, we need language and we need to understand how interference, and take that word right now, write it down, get it into your language library. It's like another way of describing shadow. And I'm not in love with the word shadow. It's okay. I think it has a lot of connotations to it. I'm not, shadow, woundedness, that's all trauma, that's all part of the same frequency band. But I like interference because I feel like it takes out some of the judgments that we have around any of those words. And I'm not saying to discount trauma or shadow or woundedness, because it's important to acknowledge that. But for our purposes, as we're working in the realm of leadership here, I want us to consider, I'm going to invite you to consider this word interference. And interference can come from inside of you, or interference can come from outside of you. Both are true. So when you are very attuned to your full system, body, just think right now of your body, your physical body, your mind, so that is your positive mind, your negative mind, your neutral mind, how this human brain, which is meant to be a sorter, but can also become there's a part of our brain called the reticular activation system, which is programmed to seek out things that collaborate whatever thought is moving through to help you feel safe, even if it's completely not true. But you need to know, there's a great yogic teaching that says, know your mind. We've talked about that before. Heart, know your heart and your emotions, and when you're in alignment and when you're not, and what you need, and your spirit, knowing our spirit. Those 4 parts, why we keep coming back to those 4 parts, which are the 4 realms of well-being and personal sustainability, is if you don't know how your instrument is working, and when you're in a interference frequency, like I was sharing with you all around righteous resentment, I could feel it come into my mind. I could feel it in my body. I could tell it was draining me, but I didn't know how to do. I'm like, I need to cleanse myself of this and find some other way to be with the energy. Frustration is similar. It just zaps your energy. So you'll always notice an interference frequency when it drains you, when it dampens you, when it disheartens you, when it makes you feel disengaged or like disembodied. This happens a lot. Or makes you feel distant or separate from and isolated. These are all signs that the interference frequency is running. And so whether that's frustration, where like other people can't see what you can, and then it's just like, oh, this is what's happening. Because then we can move it up into the heart level frequency, the frequency that's about your gifts and your part to play. And oftentimes, whatever the interference is, it's showing us something that actually is our part to respond to, but we can't respond from the interference frequency. We actually have to slow down, take a breath, take a beat, see what's happening here within us, and ask the question, what do I need to get centered? What am I feeling? What's happening in me, and what do I need to get back to my center? Then, once we're centered, we can respond from our intuition. We can see more clearly. So in this frustration, this part, I see what others cannot. Here is what we do. Okay? So whenever that frustration or the impatience or the righteous resentment or whatever comes up for you, when you see what others cannot, which can be maddening, I'm just saying it's, as if to take a stretch. Just, it's like, this would all happen much faster if we all didn't have so much wounding and trauma and imprints inside of us. But that's okay. We're transmuting, we're evolving, we are elevating. And I'll just before I give you what we do with it, one of the things that I do, one of my practices is I surround myself with what I would call conscious evolutionary thinkers who have over hundreds of years been part of leading humanity in a way that is evolving us in what is often called, we're evolving as a species. And so I surround them by the books that I read. I surround them, they're still alive, by connecting into them. A lot of them, you won't know who they are because they're not about I'm a New York Times bestselling author, or I'm super, super famous. These are not people, these are people who are renowned and revered in the world, but the people who know who they are, and they do write books and stuff. That's how I connect with them. But this level of thinking and understanding, we are evolving as a human species from Homo sapien to sometimes they call it the new human. It's a human reality in which instead of having to live from our struggle and continued recapitulating the wounds and the traumas generation over generation over generation, we are at a moment of potential freedom, true freedom. But we have to deal with the past before we can get there. This is the sacred transformation triangle that I have shared with you all, right? We have to heal and release the past. We have to stay harmonized and stable in the now while we're also creating and leading the new. So this is happening at a cultural level. And if you have your eyes open and your intuitive illuminator is working with you, you'll see this evolution happening. And it's horrifying when you just can only see it through the lens of what's happening to individual humans, which has been happening for thousands and thousands of years on this planet. And it's not to discount what's happening to humans as to spiritually bypass it. It's to see the suffering that's happening, and instead of just recapitulating the trauma ourselves or pushing it aside or just cementing over it to just get on to the next thing, in our own micro way, we're working with this, but then seeing the bigger macros that are happening. And it's everything. I don't want to get into all of that right now. Maybe I will do a podcast on it and kind of share some of the things that I see as an intuitive illuminator in that. But I don't want to put that into this space right now. I want to invite you to open up your intuitive illuminator. I can see what others cannot. And looking at some of the things that are happening and saying, where's the generational pattern that has kept humanity stuck in struggle and warring against and fear and giving away their power instead of embracing their sovereignty and then working together like humans are meant to? What's kept that in place? And what are some of the things that might be coming to such a degree they might be ready to truly be healed? But we have to go back and do that first. So there's some deep dark things in there, from greed to abuse of power to many things. So just start to see the bigger patterns that are happening. Not to overwhelm you, but actually, for me, it actually helps to see that happening, because then I can see how humanity is evolving if we can stay and continue to move into our hearts. So here's what we do, because each of you, if you're here with me and we're in feminine power time together and we're exploring this, I know that you're on Team Elevate. You wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here otherwise. There's like no way we would have found each other. And so I know that you're on Team Elevate. I don't know what your purpose is, what your part is, how it's evolving, because it is, for many of us, is evolving to its next stage. But here's what I can say we do with this piece of I see what others cannot. Okay, this comes from the Intuitive Illuminator. I am adept at translating and speaking this intuitive intelligence to make the link for what others cannot see. And I do this by, and here's the equation: illuminate, educate, liberate, elevate. I am adept at translating and speaking this intuitive intelligence to make the links for what other people can't see. Illuminate, educate, liberate, and elevate. This is how we shift consciousness and evolve. Notice that doesn't say prove, convince, manipulate, scream at the top of my lungs. Not that. That's why I didn't go deeper, even sharing with you about some of the things I see in that from my place of the Intuitive Illuminator, because I want you to open your eyes even more and your senses even more, and how we do that, talk about it in a second, so that you can see what you see. I talked about this once before, where I said I had an example of this is when my plastic awakening, and also my potato chip awakening. So I'll share the plastic awakening was in 2018. I was living in Bainbridge Island, and a beautiful podcast listener, so sweet, sent me this Christmas present, this holiday present, and it was a coffee grinder, because she knows I love coffee, and so she sent me this grinder. I was so happy to get it, so grateful for it, still am. But I opened it, and it was like November, December, and there was just all this plastic, and there was so much plastic. And I froze, and it just I had this illumination. It was it was an illuminated insight, and I was I saw all of the plastic that would be created and all of the garbage that would be created because of the holiday Christmas season, just in America, not even but the whole world. And I just froze in my kitchen. I was like, oh my God, I don't know. How do I get rid of this plastic? What do I do? And I've always had a consciousness around trying to do my best to not use plastic. But what happened is, for the month afterwards, I go to the grocery store, you all, and I would just walk in and I would just freeze, and I didn't know what to do. Poor Noah. I'm like, I can't buy it. All I could see was, I could see it everywhere. I could see single-use plastic everywhere. I could see it on the toilet paper. I could see it was just and people just walking around completely unconscious, just buying the plastic. We just buy the plastic, and I couldn't go to the grocery store for probably 2 months. And so we started making some changes. We got mason jars, and we got other things that we did. And it's still challenging, for me when I walk into someone's house and they're drinking plastic bottled water, Or I went to the Greek Fest yesterday and they're serving food in plastic clamshells and styrofoam, and the people who I'm with just like throw it in the garbage can. And here's me, I have my plastic cups that I got when I got to drink a beer and a wine in, and I carried them home and put them into and I only had the same cup to use for my 2 glasses of wine, and then I washed them out and then I put them in the recycle bin. Not the best, but still better. So it's like it could be that practical, right? And then it's like, okay, like I can't just run around like a mad woman being like, oh my God, everybody, shame on you, blame on you, because then I'm just throwing interference frequency on them. And so this illuminate, educate, liberate, elevate, it's a way that in any situation you can choose to illuminate. So I'm illuminating right now with you all of this was what happened for me, so that maybe that supports you, in some way. Or, I do it in a very, remember that the feminine doesn't prove, she's not here to prove, convert, evangelize, but we do illuminate to educate, to liberate, to elevate. And so that for you, I'm thinking of a person that I worked with recently for the decision at her company that she was trying to influence, and she was really frustrated because she just felt like they weren't hearing her, and it was a really important thing from a people perspective. And so she just started illuminating her idea and sharing it with the people she knew had the power to do things differently, not pushing, but illuminating this could happen, and this is how it could look. And I was thinking about this. So instead of being frustrated that people weren't doing it differently, she started having conversations about what was possible. And then educating was bringing in some of the mental, the logical things, like this would save us money, this would create money. For me with the plastic is educating people on different alternatives. And then liberate is the part about freeing ourselves from the imprints that keep us bound up and only continuing conventional things or things that aren't actually creating what we want, and making that change so that we can operate from an elevated perspective. And it doesn't mean that when we put this into place, everything is Shangri-La, but we make incremental progress. And this is a very important part of the Intuitive Illuminator and the energy of having clear intentions and really supporting yourself to know that this is a long game. We stand in a long line of intuitive illuminators, and I don't know exactly how long it's going to take for the whole mainstream world to get to a place where intuitive attunement is just natural, when it's part of we operate as a full human, body, mind, heart, and spirit, full spectrum of intelligence. If you follow some of the time cycles through different esoteric traditions, it's about another 2,000 years. But, not to depress anybody, but that's the mainstream, the main consciousness, is we're pioneers, and then there are the people who I would say, focus on the receptive ones. Well, I didn't say that. That was actually an insight that was given to me in one of my pauses and moments of stillness to help me discern where to put my energy at. And so it's focus on the receptive ones. So if you, tune into where you want to be putting your energy, what your part in this elevation is within yourself, within your one-on-one relationships, within your smaller groups, communities, teams, within your local world, and then your bigger systems and global world, what is just your part to illuminate, educate, liberate, and elevate, and make the links that people can't see. And not by proving or manipulating or for God's sakes, that's why I don't bring in righteous resentment. That's why I had to go do the cleanse. No one wants to, even if it's slight, that's what's interesting in our voice, in our energy, in our subtle bodies, people can feel that energy, whether it's blame or frustration or whatever that interference is. So even if we're saying one thing, and we have any tinge, especially in any place where we are trying to open people's minds, or we're in a leadership position where we are, we've been given that position or a position of power, we have to be not diligent, but I think diligent is good, with understanding that as we elevate, there are these parts in us that we have to kind of elevate our frequency too. And there's I don't know where this comes from. There's like a saying that says, "For much whom is given, much is expected." I don't like that, but I'm gonna do a different ring on it that's not so punitive. It's for those who are given the gift to see what others can't, which is a great gift, because if you allow yourself to open your senses and to see, which is going to mean it's going to bring up some unease in you, because you're going to unmoor yourself from the things that you've used to keep yourself safe and secure, and you're going to have to find new things to moor to. But the good news is what you're mooring to and rooting to is actually more real than the things that we think are real. That's a gift, because, as I look at, I have my days with the world, and my human heart hurts, for humans as a collective choosing to go through such a path that ravages so much pain. And I know that's also been happening for a long time. And so it helps me to see the bigger pattern that's happening, so then I can I can pray that the human heart opens. Like, this is my prayer right now. Like, when I tuned in from the Intuitive Illuminator and went deep and said, "Show me, like, you gotta give me something. You gotta give me something. Divine grace, like, what, gotta give me something here." And that was, what's the Jedi point? What's the thing that's going to open this up? And it was the human heart. The human heart must awaken. And if the human heart awakens, that compassion and that love will come through, and the insight will be able to come through. Because when the heart opens and the belly softens, that's the insight. And right now, humanity is not working from the love and compassion. It's in the control, domination energy, and it's not allowing the insight, the illumined insight, to come in, because it's so just wanting to keep people on the mental plane, because that's where you can control people. So we're like, okay, let's create a different reality. We are the culture creators, right? This is the creatrix right now, right here. And so this illuminate, educate, liberate, elevate, I use it a lot to help me with patience, where I'm like, I wrote a book about, self-love like 15 years ago, and people still think self-love is masturbation. And, I'm like, I wrote a book that took me 20 years of research called Overwhelmed and Over It, that literally gets you out of the burnout matrix and gets you into a rhythm of sustainability. And people are like, can I just give me the 3 steps I have to take? And I'm just like, So there's parts of me that, can get very discouraged, which is another way I know I'm in my interference. And I just come back and I'm like, all right, it's my job to illuminate, educate, liberate, and elevate, and not convince and prove, but also like be in my own spot. So this is the piece that I want to bring us into next, which is number 3, my intuitive senses are strong. I'm connected to the subtle realms. I have access to the imaginal realms and the infinite. And I see the connection between things and between the needs of all. So where this brings us into, this is going to be the last part of this today for us, is the first part of this is that your intuitive senses are strong. What's your relationship to the subtle realms? What are you doing on a daily, weekly, yearly, monthly basis to stay tuned to the subtle realms, so that you're strengthening your intuition and your intuitive attunement, also a really great word, intuitive attunement, body, mind, heart, and spirit, daily, weekly, moonly, and yearly. And so those subtle realms are where You don't just have your 5 senses, you have your 5 plus all the other ones. So this is where the pausing, the cyclical living, the meditating, the emptiness, the walking in nature, the taking baths, getting yourself on that rhythm of so that's the Tai Chi, the Qigong, the restorative yoga. Like there's lots of different ways to do that. But if it's not something you're cultivating or curating, your intuitive illuminator would really like for you to not have to join the gym, but she would really like for you to bring this into your practice. It's going to make you so much happier, so much happier. And this is one of the reasons we do in the feminine wisdom way, we do the cyclical living and the we just did the power pause. And it's like that tuning in, like those are these rituals, like rituals are so amazing. Just that in itself will help you attune, because those subtle realms are on the planet, and they're also, in the quantum. Part of that is also having access to the imaginal realms and the infinite. So imaginal realms, there's many different mystics who have said we are in a crisis of imagination right now. And imagination is one of the most essential things we want to cultivate and curate and keep alive. So for yourself, what are you doing to foster and cultivate that imagination? And for any of you who have connections to the little peoples that are younger, under the age of 40, 28, what are you doing to help foster, even if it's just one person? This is partly, what my eyes see is there's a reason. If you look at changes that have been made over decades to the education system to take out the things that support imagination, except if you're like, at a Montessori school or you're at Waldorf or something like that really understands that in order to create free humans who create wholeness, we need access to our imagination. We have all these kids now looking at screens, and we're looking at screens all the time, telling us what to think, telling us what, we're not in the physical realm, which is what is important as well with the imaginal realms. And again, we don't have to rage about it. We just got to do something about it. And it can be little things, like for me, it's really easy for me to give up my pottery. I do pottery because I go there to not have to know anything about anything and not be productive, but to just basically work with clay and the earth and the imaginal realm and say, what could be created here? And I let my imagination take me wherever it wants to go. And it'd be really easy to not do that because there's so many other things going on. So this is remember where we started, the busyness, the mind chatter, the input. Just say no. And just think about maybe one way that we love to use cyclical living is, what is your intuitive illuminator? Just this next cycle, just this next 13 weeks, this next quarter, or between now and an equinox or now in the solstice, what were some things that would just really support her and support you to have more space to touch into that subtle realm, the imaginal realm, and then the infinite realm? The infinite realm is about possibility. There's a teaching in many wisdom traditions that say we're born with the dream seeds that we're here to plant and tend and grow on this world. We're born with them, just like women and girls are born with all their eggs in their bodies, apparently. This is the same thing, but that it's like as a creatrix, we're born with those dream seeds, but we need our intuitive intelligence and that imaginal field to know where it's like I always say it's like we're like little time capsules that are programmed to go off at a certain time. But if we're not listening, if we're not tuned into our intuition and got heaven and earth, together, well, not heaven because heaven is on earth, but that we are connected into the quantum field and the material field, we can miss it. Interference can come up. I've seen this happen again and again. It's, it almost happened to me. I almost married the wrong person for all the wrong reasons because of my love cracks that were there that I didn't know were there because no one told me about love cracks. I had no idea that I even, like, there was the thing about like having a whole heart and that, wounds were in there. No one told me about any of those. This is why part of my work is creating curriculum for young girls and also young adults, or girls and young adults. And because I'm like, oh my God, like they need to know that they have these little love cracks in there and how to work with them. But you can miss it, and I would have married that person and I would have had a very different life because we were not compatible. He was somewhere on the narcissistic spectrum, and I would have ended up like many of my friends who procreated with narcissists, and it just zapped their creative energy and it zapped their many things. And again, it's not to say that they did something wrong. It was the choice they made for whatever the curriculum was. The universe helped me out and he broke off our engagement, and I thank him every day for that, because that was my design. And they're like, oh my God, Christine isn't listening. She's not picking up the phone from the Intuitive Illuminator. We're really going to have to whack her. We're really going to have to whack her and whack her hard. And they did whack me and whack me hard. It was a bring me to a knees kind of awakening, which is kind of what we're seeing, right now, is that I didn't want to open to those subtle realms or those infinite realms. And even though I was creative and working in a creative industry, I wasn't really tapped in to the level of possibility and what my spirit and soul was calling me to. So we're seeing that all around us right now. It's hard to wake up. It's hard to take responsibility for our parts and our piece. It's hard to look at those wounds and be with them and then choose to heal them and not just keep recapitulating them. It takes discipline and devotion and love and focus, and it's hard. And so that's how I have compassion for humanity, because I didn't want to wake up. I didn't want to see what my Intuitive Illuminator is like, I'm calling. Are you going to pick up the phone? I'm like, hell to the no. Am I picking up that phone? And so I made a promise to myself that was that I was 29 or 30. And I said, I would always, always, always listen to my heart and my soul. And I would always do that for the rest of my life. And so at the age of what would it have been, maybe a couple years later, and I had the revelation that I was working 80 hours a week for doing things that weren't really helping the world, and I call it my potato chip revelation. As soon as I had that insight, I was like, okay, like my time here is almost done. I don't know when I'm going to quit, but I'm going to quit. I'm going to move on. I'm going to go to grad school, and I'm going to do these things. And I followed my path. And so I think the thing that I want to just wrap us around with this is that this intuitive senses are strong, the subtle realms, the imagination to the imaginal is infinite. Why I'm sharing this with all of you and why it matters so much, my dear, is because it is the way that we allow our codex to open, and we flow into our part and we see our part. And then we don't get distracted because we know that part inside of our body and our being. And the interference, it doesn't want us to go completely online. Because when we do, like, it's almost like I feel it's almost like a grandmother, like an ancient grandmother is going to come by and she's just going to wag her finger at all the people that are creating shenanigans and unnecessary suffering. And they're gonna be like, she's like, nope, we're not doing this anymore. All of you, either like you got to go somewhere else or you got to get into alignment, because we're creating a world that is really operating in harmony, and it's possible, and we're going to do it, and we're going to do it together, and it might take a while, but we're all committed. I know, why can't that happen? And so wherever you are or wherever we're tuned in together today, I just want you to know that your presence matters, that you have a divine design that is not about fate. It is more about whatever those seeds are and those codex are, and that you have this ability to tune into, and this is the last one for the Intuitive Illuminator, I see the connections between things and between the needs of all. And this is where the new solution comes through, is if we can take a step back and we can see the connections and see how things are connected, and we can see the needs of the different pieces, the insight drops in for us. And so how we take this forward from here is, number one, keeping our instruments aligned to our design and integrated and aware of that interference pattern, whatever that is, whether it's frustration or it's unease. Those would be the two that or righteous resentment, that would be another one, like, or blame, that could be another one. But that unease one especially, it really interferes with our intuition. And it's okay that you're going to have unease. It's normal to have unease. But when it shows up, I want to invite you to take a breath and take a beat and really tune into, where is it coming from? Breathe into, where is it in my body? Where is it in my brain? Where is it in my belly? Where is it in my being? And relax your brain. Soften your belly. Come back into your being and your body. And see what is real and what is true and what's needed. And then create the space to really tune into these subtle realms and these imaginal realms and these infinite realms, because it's going to pull you up in a way and also ground you and root you down, that you're going to be operating at a slower pace during these times where you're really actively tuning in, so that when you're in the world and it's moving fast, you can slow down within it. You'll get more done. Trust me, you really will. You really will. And it will also allow you to see the connection between things. And then the third thing is, remember that you can see things that other people can't. And the equation of illuminate, educate, liberate, and elevate. And the last piece to remember before I wrap us up here, is this piece around the unease and the interference piece, is remember not to make a decision from that point. This is a great teaching that comes from the Gene Keys, which is connected to the I Ching, among other things. And it's the 57th hexagram in the I Ching. And when we make decisions from unease, because we just want to feel better or have some level of certainty, the things that we create will come from that interference. So there's a lot here of why working with cycles and why having patience, but also not so much patience we don't move at all. So just really notice that in your decision making, notice it in your energy and how much life force you're giving. And also I wanted to end us with a reading today that comes from the 57th Gene Key, which is called Gentle Penetration. And as I read this to all of us as an ending, I want you to just touch your heart for a moment. And you can also touch your belly to just feel these dream seeds inside of you. And feel your part, feel your presence. And we're going to apply this to that. All right, 1 second. Here we go. Gentle penetration. A subtle penetrating effect is like a soft wind blowing through reeds that are bending gracefully, demonstrating flexibility and endurance. This symbolizes a quiet, relaxed effectiveness in action. A gentle influence is at work, but just as the wind can be ceaseless in its efforts, small forces can add up to produce lasting results. Gentle penetration bodes well for new relationships or enterprises. Just as a summer breeze slowly penetrates the woods to cool the forest, the ideas of gifted leaders slowly reach and sink into the minds and hearts of people. In personal relationships, a gentle beginning can lead to a long-lasting union. When using a force that is soft but persistent, careful aim is necessary. For only when a small force continually moves in the same direction will it have a cumulative effect. In human affairs, this kind of soft influence comes more through strength of character than by direct confrontation or active seduction. It's important to have and stick to clearly defined goals. Maintaining a strong vision and following a steady course of least resistance will bring good fortune. And so, guided by the Creatrix, along with the Intuitive Illuminator, stay focused on your intentions for yourself, those in your immediate influence, and the part that you're here to play in this world orchestra, creating harmonic order. And know that the incremental progress, see it, feel it, and don't, when the pressure of the unease or the frustration or the blame or the fear comes up, slow down, take a breath, take a beat, tune in to what you need to recenter. And that trust that life is giving you a space to take the space that you need. And that your frequency and vibration and presence is enough to change this world, one heart at a time. I'm so glad to be with you. I'm grateful for all of you. I invite you, ask you, one request is to share this podcast, share this episode on the feminine leadership archetype of Intuitive Illuminator with a friend, and share what comes up for you all, and be supports for each other when we are in the interference frequencies, including unease. It's great to be able just to talk about it. And like, this is the frustration, this is the unease. Like, we love the shadow. We want to love it and hug it into into its higher, its elevated level. It's the stuffing it that has caused the problems that we see so much on this planet. So name it and share it with somebody who can really witness it. And then also take what we've talked about today to shift it into what is real and what is needed and what you need and what you want to do with the energy. You know, some of the things that I received from my cleanse around righteous resentment, that resentment is telling me something. It's helping me clarify where to put my energy at and where not to put my energy at. And so those interferences aren't wrong. We want to love them and hug them, and then have someone that you can share this with, and then walk with each other in the cyclical way. You know, meet monthly, meet quarterly, you know, work with the power pauses. I'm here, the podcast is here, we're giving them, join us for the flow, power, you know, feminine wisdom way. Make it up yourself, but then have that consistent rhythm with each other. You've heard me many times talk about my friend Shasta. We've met now every month since 2015. So that's 10 years. And that consistency can really matter to help us know that we're not alone. So please do share this, and I will be back again very soon for the next one, and we'll go from there. And also just wanted to say thank you very much to those of you that have left reviews on Feminine Power Time. I just want to end us with one from Eva Naram. Wisdom, inspiration, and activation. I love taking walks and listening to Christine. She's so full of sage wisdom, and I always feel uplifted and inspired after listening. She's a literal lifetime of wisdom that she's sharing, and I find incredible nuggets in every episode. If you're not listening to Feminine Power Time and you have interest in the evolution of your spirit in our world, you should be. Thank you so much, Eva, for posting that. And of course, you know, I always like to say I'm just the translator. And this podcast, this thing that we call a podcast, that to me is much more about us gathering together, wouldn't be possible without all of you here. So I'm just sending so much love to you all, and just a deep bow to all of the work that you're doing to be your most integrated whole self, the ways you're connecting and touching people in the world, and the difference your presence is making. I know we are stronger together, and I feel deeply grateful to be here with you all. So thank you for coming. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon. Much love.